Well, this was their chance, but the Halos still haven't won a series against a team over 500. We'll tell you what happened against the Astros on Wednesday, and then we're going to talk about why this Halos team that's over 500 doesn't feel like a winning team. What's up with that? It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And Johnny and I thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including SiriusXM, by searching Locked On Angels. And the best way to help us out is by giving us a rate and a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed and click the bell to be notified every time a new episode drops. And today's show is brought to you by the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
Thank you for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, it's our second season here at Locked On Angels. We're big fans of this team, lifelong fans of this team. Before I could even talk, I think I was an Angel fan, thanks to you, Mike, and our other two brothers. But
you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the misery that you put me through the last 10 years. Hey, Locked On Everydayers, join us tomorrow for Fan Mail Friday. We already got some questions coming in, so make sure that you get at us at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. If you're watching on YouTube, you can leave your question below. Just let us know it's for the mailbag on Friday. On today's show, is Ohtani the pitcher? Is he okay? Is there something going on there? We're going to talk about what has happened in the last few games with Shohei Ohtani. And then why doesn't it feel like we're a team that's over 500? Why does it feel like doom and gloom? We're going to get into that conversation as well. Mike, the final game against the Astros, a day game on Wednesday, it ruined the rest of my day.
Yeah, they lost. I don't know if you know that or not, but the Angels
lost. I'm aware.
They lost 5-4. They're 20-18, 3 games back of the Rangers. Johnny, they had a chance in the 9th, and Mike Trout gets on. Shohei Ohtani hits a home run off his shoe tops.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's 5-4 against Ryan Presley, looking really good. And then Rendon makes it on, and Renfroe makes it on. The first 4 batters reach, and then we can't move anybody over.
No.
We can't make contact. Drury strikes out, and then Theis gets out. He popped out, and then a little weak ground out from Gio Urshela. We can't move anybody over, and that's the problem in the 9th. We are pressuring them. We're pushing them. Ryan Presley is on the ropes. We got the tying run at second base, and we do nothing. And that just kind of summarizes how this season has gone so far. Opportunities that were missed.
Yeah, exactly. Brandon Phillips should have been in for Rendon right away.
And
so to tie up the game.
I'm gonna make a statement, and it's gonna sound ridiculous, but I'm just gonna make this statement. Okay. That showed me that Phil Nevin wasn't playing to win this game.
No.
Because if Rendon is at second base, I get a single scores him, but it is Anthony Rendon, right? And he does have his 2 hips that are surgically repaired.
Yeah.
But truthfully, you put Brandon Phillips in that game, and then if
Brett Phillips,
I say Brandon all the time, don't I? I just want Brandon, right? And so you put Brett Phillips at second base, and then if you tie the game, which you hope you do if you have him sub in, you can move somebody to third base and bring in Jake Lamb.
To third,
right?
Jake Lamb. You can move Drury to first. You can put Renfroe at second. You got tons of options there, Mike, and it just didn't happen. And the weird thing about that is they were warming up Carlos Estevez in the event that there was a tie game. So I'm not sure what the thinking there is, not putting in Brett Phillips at second base.
Wasn't a full thought, I think, is what I felt. It wasn't a full thought. Like they're planning for this, but they're not planning to actually get there.
I also get letting Brandon Drury swing it, but put down a bunt for goodness sakes. Like move these 2 guys over. At least get yourself that guaranteed run on second base. It's two runners on, nobody out, and you've got tons of pressure on Ryan Presley. This guy who's a really great closer for the Astros has just surrendered a single to Trout, a 2-run home run to Shohei Ohtani, and then back-to-back hits I think Renfroe walked actually, so it was Rendon and Renfroe on base. Just what are you doing? Come on, man.
You got to make contact. Like a little weak ground ball to the right side moves the runner over. I think maybe you're right. A little bunt moves the runner. I know you're Brandon Drury and you're a home run hitter, but I think you got to be utilized in a different way in this moment. And the fact that he didn't make contact is why the Angels weren't able to do anything then. And then you're reliant upon Matt Theis, who has to make contact. He has to get a hit, and he
Yeah.
pops it up.
First
and then,
pitch.
Gosh, that's the other thing that's frustrating too, is Presley's on the ropes.
Yeah.
So I think that
don't
you
give
have
him an
to,
easy out.
Yes, make him throw some pitches, and then
Yeah.
Urshela just didn't make any sort of good contact, a little weak ground ball, and it ended the game. So frustrating.
It's neither here nor there because they struck out 34 times over this series, Mike.
Yeah.
They struck out 6 times on Monday, which is the game they won. They struck out 14 times on Tuesday and 14 times on Wednesday.
Gosh, that feels like last year.
Yeah.
It feels like last year's team.
It's just awful. And a lot of people have said, hey, this is why Marcus Timms got fired from the Yankees, is because of the strikeouts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I like the approach of attacking stuff in the zone, but they're not doing that. And they haven't done that the last 2 days. They didn't do it against Valdez. They didn't do it against Javier. And it really ended up costing them. But the bigger thing is that they keep beating themselves, Mike.
Yes.
They keep beating themselves up on defense with throwing errors and issues and miscues. Griffin Canning started out pretty good through 3 innings, and then he lost it all in the 4th inning. 5 earned runs because of his own error trying to pick somebody off at first base. There was an error on Anthony Rendon. I don't know if it got scored as an error, but basically it went under Anthony Rendon's glove, and so Kyle Tucker got a single, and everything just kind of fell apart from there. Jimmy Herget came in and let those inherited runners score, so those got charged to Griffin Canning, and so it cut another outing short, and it's another frustrating way for the Halos to get in their own way. Get Benji Gill out there again to talk to these guys, because that's what worked on Monday, and it didn't last. It worked on Monday, and Tuesday and Wednesday we're right back to striking out and making miscues and defensive errors and issues, things like that. It's just really frustrating that this team keeps getting in its own way. Now, Hunter Renfroe did put the Angels on the board early with a 2-run home run, his 10th home run, the first guy to get to double-digit home runs on the team. But the Angels have lost 4 of 5. They've lost 2 straight series, Mike, against divisional rivals in the Texas Rangers, who are ahead of them, and the Astros, who fortunately are still behind them in the standings. But these are the games that you're going to look back and be frustrated that you lost in August, in September, when it comes down to the wire. You and I did a segment a few months ago on 13 wins from last season that should have, or 14 losses that should have been wins, I believe is the segment that we did. And yesterday felt like one of those games. Yesterday felt like one of those games that they should have won, could have won, but it's enough. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. They got to go out there and act on it, and they just haven't done that yet.
Yeah, speaking of Rendon, I know that people have been frustrated with Anthony Rendon, and that one play was kind of the epitome of people's frustration. Like, he's just not super solid, but then he has a great play at third base.
I know.
There was a great tweet from Sam Blum, friend of the show. Somebody tweeted at him and said, "Can the Angels use Rendon at DH? He's becoming a liability on defense." Sam's response was awesome. He said, "For sure. Last I checked, the Angels don't have a DH already, so this is a good idea."
Well, the media was able to sit down with Rendon, and they asked him, "Hey, what's up with the lack of power?" And he said, "I've never been a home run guy. I'm not Tony Fourbags," which I think is hilarious. But you go back to his last few seasons in Washington, it's like, no, dude, you hit 20 plus home runs like 4 seasons in a row. We need that back, please.
Right. Yeah.
Let's find that swing again, buddy.
Yeah. Johnny, the Angels play the Cleveland Guardians tomorrow. They have a day off today, which is great. So maybe they can recollect themselves. They're going to play tomorrow at 4:10 Pacific time. I hope that this is actually a good get-right series for them, because the Guardians are under 500, and maybe perhaps we can win this series, and then we go to Baltimore after that. Anybody that wants to listen to the game, you can actually catch it on the Angels hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. You can just search Angels.
Hey, coming up on Locked On Angels, is there something wrong with Shohei Ohtani on the mound? Well, a lot of people were concerned after his outing on Tuesday night and his previous outings against St. Louis and the Oakland A's. He surrendered some home runs recently, Mike. So we're going to dive into the numbers, find out for ourselves. We'll take a look at that in just a minute.
Today's show is brought to you by the Game Time app. With the Game Time app, buying tickets for all the sports and music and comedy and theaters is fast and easy. This app offers great deals on last-minute tickets and actually gives the guarantee best price. On the Game Time app, you can buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. You can see the images of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Discover the lowest price guarantee and even get event cancellation protection. Tickets are sent directly to your phone. You don't have to dig through the email, which is great. Grab tickets without all the stress with a Game Time app. You can download the app right now, create an account, and use this promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. And again, you can create an account and redeem a code for $20 off. That's LOCKEDONMLB. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. Locked On Everydayers, join us for Fan Mail Friday tomorrow. Get your questions in today. We want to hear from you so we can answer them tomorrow. There's no game to recap because there's no game today, so we have a full episode of Fan Mail Friday questions. Hey, the Angels play the Guardians tomorrow at 4:10 Pacific time. Tyler Anderson is going to be going against the rookie Logan Allen, who's been good in 3 starts, a 1-1 record, a 2.7 ERA. You can catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels.
Johnny, we did a deep dive into Ohtani's starts this season because there's been some questions about if he's okay. Like, what is going on? We noticed that he was kind of messing with a finger 2 nights ago against the Astros and had a kind of one bad inning. Really wasn't a bad inning. I mean, he only gave up 3 runs in that game.
Right.
But we didn't score any runs for him, so that's the reason why he lost. But there's been some questions about him calling his own pitches. There's been some questions about if he's throwing too many sweepers. And so we did a deep dive. So I'm going to steal your line. Buckle up, nerds. Here comes some stats.
Here comes the stats,
Why don't you start us, Johnny?
Well, just to keep it simple really fast, Mike, just for the first 5 starts, he had 2 earned runs total. And over his last 3 starts, he's got 12 earned runs and 5 home runs. So that's what has been concerning. His pitch mix in 2022, he used the slider 37% of the time, 4-seam fastball 30.7% of the time, the split 13% of the time, the curveball 10% of the time, the cutter 7.5%, a sinker 2.4%. And now here's his 2023 pitch mix. 48.9% sweepers, 26.5% 4-seam fastballs, 10% cutters, only 6% on the splitter, a 5.2% sinker, and his curveball sits at 3.6. And then get this, his number 1 pitch from last year, this year it's 0.2% on the slider. So he's throwing that sweeper way more. So what I did was I went and looked at the pitch mix for his first 5 games. Again, 2 earned runs total versus his last 3 starts, which was 12 earned runs total. And generally, the sweeper is still the pitch that he's throwing the most. It's usually 45 sweepers or more. In fact, the games where people are most concerned, the 27th versus the A's, the 3rd versus St. Louis, and the 9th versus the Astros, he threw 39 sweepers, which is lower than any he threw in the first 5 games against the A's. And we'll get into what happened there in just a minute. Now, he did throw 52 against St. Louis, but he also threw 36 fastballs, 5 splitters, and 4 sinkers. And then versus the Astros the other night, 40 sweepers. On that was 14 swings and misses. So either a called strike or a whiff on that. So a called strike plus whiff, 14 of those. 32 sinkers against the Astros the other day. And there were 14 called strikes plus whiffs on that as well. And then he threw the fastball as well and had 8 called strikes plus whiffs. So regarding is there anything different between his first 5 starts versus his second round of starts, the last 3, I would say, Mike, that the splitters are not quite as numerous as they have been in his first 5 starts. He's relied on that a lot less. He's only thrown, 10 in the last 3 games versus the first 5 games. I should say in the first 5 games, he's got 11 between 2 games. So he's definitely using that split finger fastball a lot less. And that's really eye-opening. Honestly, that might be the one that hurts your elbow a little bit or gets you the blisters on the fingers a little bit. So maybe that's why he's not relying on it as much. Mike, we actually broke down the specific pitches that caused the home runs or the doubles or things like that. Why don't you start with that Astros game on May 9th?
Okay, so let's talk this through. He had a 3-run 5th inning against the Astros. Unfortunately, Martin Maldonado, former Angel, was the one that came after us, and even in yesterday's game had a single. And so it always seems to work that way for the Halos. Former Halos always hurt us. It was the sweeper. So dead center in the zone that he actually gave up. And then he gave a single to DePon on a sinker. Bregman hit a pop-up single on a fastball, and then Alvarez had a single on a cutter. So it was the sweeper that actually hurt Ohtani in the game on the 9th.
Yeah, and he also, he gave up all of those hits in a row. One was a sinker, one was a fastball, one was a cutter,
Yeah.
and it was the sweeper just right over the plate to Maldonado.
Bad location.
That was bad location. Yeah.
Yep. If you look at his start against the Cardinals, it was the first and in the 4th inning where he really struggled. In the 1st inning, he gave up a home run to Nolan Gorman. That was a sinker up in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the 4th inning, he gave a double to Nolan Arenado. It was a sweeper in on the hitter. So it actually was good hitting.
It was a good
not
sweeper.
Bad pitching, right? And then he gave up a double to Contreras. That was a sweeper over the plate. And then Dylan Carlson hit a home run. Again, sweeper over the plate. So both of those were bad location. On the double to Arenado, it was just a good hitter getting a good swing on a really good pitch.
Then on the 27th versus the A's, this is where we started to see the home runs get to Ohtani. It was a 5-run 5th. Brent Rooker had a home run on a cutter. Shea Langoliers had a home run on a sweeper that was actually up in the zone. And then Ryan Noda had a double on a sweeper just dead center of the strike zone. So to me, Mike, it feels like location. So is the problem the sweeper? Well, 3 of the 5 home runs he's surrendered so far have been bad located sweepers.
Yeah.
But he's also given up a home run on a cutter and a sinker. So I think the sample size is too small right now to make a judgment call on, well, he needs to stop throwing the sweeper, because he's been using it 48.9% of the time this season, and it's his number 1 pitch so far this season. Mike, is the issue less splitters perhaps?
Yeah, it seems like he's kind of fallen out of love with the splitter. His usage is way down in the last 3 games. Gooby talks a lot about this, and so does Langston on the radio side, that pitchers can fall in love with a certain pitch because it's effective. Mm-hmm. But if you use it enough, you're actually helping the hitter, because they're going to communicate to the other hitters, hey, that ball is moving this way, or it's actually locating up or locating down. And so it seems to be that he's falling in love with a sweeper and less in love with a splitter. It feels like he really was successful with the splitter last year, but he's kind of let that pitch go.
Well, even this year, Mike, he had 14 splitters in his first start against the A's on the 30th of March. The next time he went out against the Mariners, he had 8 splitters. He only threw 1 against the Nationals and didn't throw any against the Red Sox, but that was that 2-inning rain delay.
Didn't have time.
And then he had 5 splitters against the Royals, but even that is a lot more than he's been using it in the last 3 games. Mike, is it Ohtani himself? Is there cause to be concerned here? Well, I pulled some stats regarding some of the best pitchers in the league, and let's start with Ohtani. He's got a 2.74 ERA. He's given up 5 home runs. Mike, he's got a .913 whip, so 9/10 of a person getting on base per inning, right?
Those are Mariners.
Sandy Alcantara of the Marlins, guess what he has? A 4.53 ERA. He's given up 4 home runs, and he's got a 1.214 whip. Dylan Cease, who was in the Cy Young conversation last season of the White Sox, Mike, he's got a 5.58 ERA. He's given up 5 home runs, and it's a 1.512 whip. Finally, Alek Manoah of the Blue Jays, also in that Cy Young conversation last year, 4.83 ERA, 6 home runs, and a 1.659 whip. So it's not just Shohei that's struggling. There's a lot of aces out there that are struggling. Maybe it's the new rules. What do you think?
Yeah, it could be the new rules with the pitch clock, bigger bases, no shift. These rules, Johnny, were implemented to make pitching a little bit more difficult. Right?
Yeah.
And so that we're seeing that across the board, not just with Shohei. We're seeing that across the board.
Right.
I think we got spoiled at the beginning of the year with Shohei because he looked phenomenal in his first few starts. The last few starts, he's looked somewhat human, although if you looked at those numbers, you'd take that all day long because he actually hasn't pitched terribly.
Absolutely.
But I think the new rules do have an impact on a pitcher, especially on a pitcher like Shohei Ohtani.
And it doesn't change the fact that Ohtani has had mislocation and surrendered home runs. Like, mislocation is going to happen. But let's remember that he's had to adjust to the pitch clock in actual games this season. He had 2 starts in spring training. One was, with the big club, and then one was against like Double-A for the Diamondbacks, I think, or something like that, or Single A. And the rest of the time he pitched over spring training, he was in the WBC, and they weren't going by these rules in the WBC. They didn't have bigger bases or a pitch clock or anything like that. So Shohei has been learning as the season has been going. Now, he's had a great start in those first 5 games, and he struggled a bit with bad location. But I think a rushed pitch or not quite having enough time on the mound is going to cause you to have mislocation. Mike, he was, I think, third slowest in the league last season. I know Jose Suarez was the longest between pitches, and Shohei was up there either second or third last season. And so for him to have to pick up the pace the way that he has, I think that affects a pitcher. I think that is also what we're seeing across the board with these other pitchers. And so if he's rushing pitches, that will result in a mislocation. But again, like you said, these rules were meant to make it harder on pitchers, and we're seeing that all across MLB.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by So Rare. You got to check out So Rare. It's a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace. It's transforming fans into owners like you. And with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, So Rare managers truly own their experience. They're collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win really great rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play, so you should get involved in this today. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance. You're going to collect increasingly powerful cards. You're going to access next-level competitions and rewards. Head to sorare.com/lockedon. That's spelled SORARE.com. You can draft your team of free player cards. You can set your lineup, and you can start competing today, and you're going to win all sorts of great rewards because you're a smart baseball fan. You tuned into Locked On Angels, so we know that you're smart. Again, head to sorare.com/lockedon, and you can start playing today.
Mike, I got a confession to make.
All right. Tell me your sins, my son.
I like to win. I like winning.
Yes.
And I like when my baseball team wins.
Yeah.
And I like when they're good.
Mm-hmm.
And the Angels have a winning record right now. They're 20-18. They came out of April with a winning record. So far in May, they're 5-5, so they're at 500 for the month. I love to win, Mike.
Yep.
So why doesn't it feel like we're winning?
I know. I'm with you.
I'm going nuts over here.
Yeah, you and I feel that way. I think all Angel fans feel that way. It doesn't feel like we're a 20-18 team with 3 games out of first place. It doesn't feel like that at all. So a couple thoughts here, Johnny. Here's the first thought.
Okay, make me feel better.
I think it doesn't feel like we're winning because we're not winning against teams over 500.
True. Yes, that makes sense.
We're beating teams that we should beat, and that's expected.
Well, and that's good because the last 2 years they have crapped the bed against teams that they should beat, and they haven't beat them. So at least we're at that floor, I guess you could say.
Right. And we haven't won against the teams that we would hope to win against, like the teams that are at 500 or over 500. And so I think that we're just not sure, or maybe we are sure and are afraid to admit it. We're just not sure about this team. Like, where do they measure up? How do they measure up? Right. And they're crushing the teams that they should crush, but they're not defeating the teams that they've been competitive against.
Yeah.
But they're not defeating those teams. And I think that makes it feel like, we're over 500, but it doesn't feel like we're over 500.
Yeah, and there's a lot of teams right now sitting around the 500 mark. We had to vote and do the power rankings as Locked On podcast hosts. All the teams hosts got together and voted on the power rankings, and it was tough because there's so many teams sitting at 500 right now that it was really hard to separate that middle of the pack.
Yep.
But you're right. Like, we haven't defeated a team over 500. We lost a series to the Rangers. We lost a series to the Astros. Those are the teams we're competing with. I mean, fortunately, we've taken the series from the A's twice and the Mariners early on.
Yeah.
And I know the Mariners are still kind of struggling out of the gate too, but they have the ability to turn it around. We've seen them do that last year. The other thing, Mike, is this is the best team on paper that we've had in forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that it's on paper.
Right.
And what I mean by that is we've had terrible defense. We've had lots of errors. We've had tons of unearned runs. There's been mistakes on routes to the ball in the outfield. There's been mistakes on the infield, bad throws, the catcher's interferences,
We've
all
seen
that
so
stuff.
many catcher's interferences. I've never seen so many catcher's interferences in one season. It was like the first time I saw it was like 10 years ago.
I know.
What happened?
What was that?
Yeah.
Jeff
Exactly.
Mathis did what?
Yeah.
But then also just unawareness of where to throw the ball, situational awareness. Like, these guys are just not paying attention to what's going on the field, and people are forgetting how many outs there are and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so again, this team on paper feels really great. You look at the lineup, you look at who you've got, and they just haven't come through in the ways that you've expected. And I think that comes down to having a lead in almost every game and then letting that get away, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've had a lead, I think, almost in every game. I think like 80%, 90% of the games.
It's something crazy like that.
Right? And we've had leads even against those teams that are over 500. And so I think that the assumption for me, for you, for Angel fans, is that the Angels should be 10 games over 500 right now. Like that's where they should be. Problem is blown saves, mental errors have cost them. We've really hurt our pitching staff. Lack of hitting with runners in scoring position yesterday was the example of that.
Right.
Nobody out, 2 on, and we can't do anything?
Yeah.
Really? And then I think the whole sticking to the playbook has cost them early with pitching opportunities and who are they going to bring in? And then Carlos Estevez has to go to Phil Nevin and say, hey, Phil, I'll tell you when I'm ready to pitch instead of you telling me, which I loved. I think the biggest thing, Johnny, the biggest problem that we have felt is the high expectations and the high pressure. Coming into this year, I think we had high expectations because, as you said, on paper, this is probably the best team that we've had in a lot of years. We have a lot of depth. And when you got Hunter Renfroe in the outfield and you got Brandon Drury and Gio Urshela, like there is some high hopes there, right? And we expected this team to win. And we also feel the pressure, I think, as fans for this team to win, because if they don't, then Shohei is probably not coming back, right? And we want to get Mike Trout to the playoffs. And so I think that this has led to a lot of overreactions after a game. Ohtani's gone, right? Like that's how people are reacting. Or after every win, especially wins against teams that are under 500, there's under reactions, right? Like, well, we should have swept that team. We should have been taking 2 out of 3. We should have swept that team, right? Like, and so this, I think, is part of why we're not feeling like this team is good or over 500, because we can't enjoy a win without critiquing it. And every loss, we're wanting to like just completely give up on life.
Right. And we got to fire this guy. We got to fire Nevin. We got to fire Perry. We already got to sell the team. None of that stuff is going to happen.
Every Angel fan's favorite letters in the alphabet are DFA, because they think that they need to DFA every single person that doesn't do well, right? And then when they do well, they're like, well, you know what I mean?
It was the A's.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. What can we do? First of all, let's take a breath. There you go. All right. Two things. You let the season play out.
Yeah.
June is the month that matters the most for the Halos, because historically, that's when they have a great record, when they finally get firing on all cylinders. And from there, we have a great summer. And I think that we just need to let this month play out in May. And then once June comes around, you're going to see these Halos really take off. And number 2, we can't overreact. Again, the loss to the Astros on Tuesday night was really frustrating because the Angels were swinging out of the zone and letting Framber Valdez have their number. But you know what? You're going to lose games to the ace of another team.
Yes.
And their staff,
right?
You're going to lose those games. So a loss to Framber Valdez, as much as the strikeouts were frustrating, is not the end of the world. It's a great pitcher versus a great pitcher. We had Valdez versus Shohei Ohtani, and just they had our number that night. And one more thing, if the Halos are going to have a winning record for the rest of this month, we need to celebrate that, even if it's against losing teams. Yes, they are going to have to beat the teams over 500. We know this, but staying competitive and beating those teams under 500 is important too, because you got to stack up the wins. I don't care what the record book says at the end of the day. I don't care if Shohei gave up 10 earned runs and the Angels won it 15-11. I don't care. It's a W at the end of the day. And that's what it comes down to, the wins and losses. How you get there is one thing. And yes, we can be frustrated with the way that they lose games because they should be better than that. But if it's a W in the record book, it's a W on my heart, Mike, because that just means that we're competing and we're doing well and we're beating the games that we should beat, winning against the teams we should be beating, and we have to stack up those wins. At the end of the season, you're not going to remember this game from May 9th or May 10th or whatever.
Right.
You're not going to remember this unless it's one of those games that come back to bite you because you weren't beating your division rivals. However, this is why you got to keep beating the teams under 500. You got to stack up those wins and move on.
I'll add one more thing. Stay off of Angels Twitter, and that'll really be helpful. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Angels play the Guardians this weekend, and the first game is tomorrow at 4:10 Pacific time. So it's an early game. So get ready for that. You can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels.
Hey, tomorrow on Locked On Angels, it's going to be a Fan Mail Friday, so you're going to want to get at us at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. And Mike, if they want to give us a call, where can they reach us?
The voicemail line. We would love to hear from you. You can leave a message, and the shorter the better. Get your point out, and then it helps us to put it on the air. 714-409-6396. That's also going to be in the show description. So give us a call. We would love to hear from you. Send us your messages. You can comment below and let us know that it's for Fan Mail Friday. And because there's no game to recap, Johnny and I get to spend 3 segments answering your questions. And so let's chat about our Halos, and let's celebrate our Halos. The fact that they're just 2 over 500 is actually a good thing, and we're going to beat those teams over 500. I have high hopes for this team.
It's better than being like 16-20 or something like that.
Right. Right.
All right, friends. Well, we hope you'll join us for Fan Mail Friday. Again, send in those questions to us on social media or get at us on our voicemail line. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for more Locked On Angels.